Hey, it's Val Townheart here with another Has Been Heroes Boss Tips video, moving into Area 6 with one of its bosses, the Herald of Gales. What can be said about this guy? This guy is arguably, absolutely, in my opinion, the hardest boss of the game. And there are quite a few reasons why. For starters, look at those immunities. Aside from the typical charm and fear immunities, he is immune to air, lice, and lightning. So therefore, you only have one form of crowd control in this entire fight, and that is using fire and water to create steam. That is the only way to slow this guy down. He also comes with a large group of pikemen that have 6 stamina apiece. And it's just not fun because they just take a while to go down, but you have to keep them all in check. They are just really, really annoying. Thankfully, they're somewhat slow, but you just want to keep them out of your hair if you can't kill them. You just got to keep them out of the fight. Because the other thing too is if you do kill them, they don't respawn. I believe there's about 8 of them in total. And once you get rid of them, they're gone. And that makes the fight a whole lot easier. But with that, we are going to move into the Herald of Gales abilities. And his abilities are, for lack of a better way of saying it, nasty as all hell. Because he telegraphs them exactly the same way. He'll hold a sword in the air, looking up in the sky. Interrupt him immediately when you see this. You do not want him to cast at all. His first ability is a teleport. And when he teleports, the range of the teleport is quite lengthy. And yes, he does have 6 attacks. You don't want him getting close ever, because it is a very likely scenario that those 8 attacks can and will one-shot just about anyone in your party. So take heed to that. That is a very important thing to know. And it is why you have to cancel every one of his spells. His second ability that he can cast is this vacuum slash ability. And it's a very peculiar ability because when he casts it, he basically blows your guy up with this gush of wind from behind, and it freezes your character so they can't do anything. They go flying through the air like E.T. past the moon in an arc. And then he smacks your guy. Thankfully for only 1 hit. But regardless, it's a hit and it's going to lower your stamina. So it is one thing you have to worry about. The other thing too is you don't want to stun him as your guy is flying through the air frozen. Because if you do stun him mid-flight, it's hard to say whether it's a bug or working as intended. The game thinks that it did the move with its single attack, and he breaks out of his stun pretty quickly. And the freeze from the vacuum slash is pretty lengthy. So what I'm getting here is, as soon as he breaks out of his stun and your guy's standing in front of him frozen, he's going to get slashed 6 times instead of 1, and it can very likely put an end to the fight right then and there. So yes, you just want to cancel those spells so he can never cast his spells. Use poison, use fire, use water. Those are the only ways you will cancel his spells, unless of course you happen to have a portal spell or a potato spell to do stamina damage enough to actually stun him. He's also pretty mobile. Like, his mobility is the other big issue. Because, yeah, he has 6 attacks. But when I think about it, I mean, I'm sure that Frozen Bite has playtested this fight. And yes, it's a very winnable fight. But this fight can get out of hand extremely quickly. And if you don't have the right spells, the fight can possibly even feel unwinnable. But back to his mobility, it just becomes increasingly dangerous throughout the entire fight. Every time you lower his max stamina out of a stun, his movement speed seems to perk up just a little bit. Not so heavily, but it does become noticeable. And then every time you damage him with melee, whether it's over stamina or breaking him out of stun, he line swaps. He is constantly changing lanes, and that is one of the major reasons why you have to kill his pikeman guards. Because if he lane swaps into one of the top or bottom lanes, and you haven't used, say, as you see in this video, Vortex to put everything in the center lane, he's going to be behind cover, and it's going to be very hard to use a melee attack just to cancel any of his spells. And that can lead to absolute disaster. But yeah, I don't know how much more there is to say to this fight, aside from you have to cancel everything he throws at you. That is really the danger of the fight. You have to cancel everything. Now, another strategy that can buy you some time is backstabbing. If you can manage to get the Herald of Gales stunned in a somewhat frontal position compared to the rest of his ads, you can actually keep him in a stun lock by attacking a far enemy and then just backstabbing through him. And by doing that, it's going to make life a lot easier, because every time you backstab him, it instantly refills his stun gauge all the way to the top. And yeah, he gets out of stun fast, but with quick enough melee recharge, you can actually keep him in a stun lock, and the only thing you'll have to worry about at that point is the pikemen getting too close. That is really the only thing at that point. But it's a situational tip, but it is a tip nonetheless. Anything that you can keep the Herald of Gales not moving with is a good thing. You want to try and just keep him down. The other thing is that his pikemen do not have any immunities at all. So they are fair game to any phobias, any charms. So that is one thing to keep in mind. If you have any wind magic, you can cause knockback to them. You can just fling them out of the way. And even better, if they're soaked, you can freeze them. If you have ice, you can freeze them. If you have poison, poison's going to do damage over time. If you have fire, you're going to do damage over time. The biggest problem with the pikemen are not just the stamina, but they seem to have a lot of hit points. They just don't want to die super easy. Plus, you can't just bombard them with spells just to get quick kills. Unless, of course, you can manage to, say, do a vortex and drop those 10-second delayed elemental spells like Meteor or Blob and just watch and just explode in an instant. Because if you can manage to do that, and you can just completely get rid of all the pikemen from the start of the fight, or at least cripple them, the fight's going to be a lot easier. But you can see here, while it's not like a new phase, this is technically like a second phase once you get all the pikemen down. And you can just see that how much easier the fight is once you get all his stamina down and all his guards down, because his stamina slowly just gets less and less. And now there's a teleport. That's how dangerous a teleport is. And that is why you have to cancel his magic, because if it wasn't for divine intervention there, even with Sakwas having 4 stamina to block that, he would have survived. But he still would have lost all his stamina and taken a pretty healthy chunk off of his hit points. So, yeah, it's definitely... I wouldn't say it's not a fun fight. It's definitely the most challenging fight in the game, in my opinion, because it's not that the fight itself is luck-based. The fight is more relegated to what can you do to be prepared for the fight. I've only, out of all the runs I've had, successful or not, I've only ever lost to the fight once, and the main reason why I did was mainly because I just didn't have the spells for it. I just did not have the spells, and I just couldn't do anything. And right there, you just saw a little bit of a humorous, not bug, but I guess working as intended, because I got hit by the vacuum slash, and I managed to stun the Herald of Gales. I use a spell to knock the Herald of Gales back, and then he went into the casting again, and did vacuum slash again, and Carr the dwarf just flew over his head, and the Herald of Gales had no way to attack, and Carr just hit him in the back from behind. And as you can see right here, this is what happens when he has no stamina. He goes into a berserk speed, and it is just, it's not fun, because even though he has no stamina, his speed is terrifying, and it's very likely that your melee recharge may not be fast enough just to hit him. So at this point, you have to use any kind of spell that can stagger him. But with a lot of thinking, a lot of patience, and a lot of smart spellcasting, you can take the Herald of Gales down. And with that, you'll be moving on in your 6th run, or even your final run, because this will be your 3rd to last boss, or 2nd to last boss, depending on what it is. And once you get rid of the Herald of Gales, I wouldn't say you're on the, well, you are on the home stretch, but there's definitely pretty much easier bosses to look forward to after Herald of Gales. But with that, this is Val Townheart signing off with the Herald of Gales boss tips video. And next time, we are going to deal with the other boss of Area 6. And he is a real doozy. He's the master of the frat party, the aspect of pandemonium. See you then.